My name is Brock Peters, and on this channel I'm going to pick a book each episode to talk about and review. The book I've decided to talk about today is one I actually just reread so I could talk about it accurately. And it's a little bit unique in that the way I read it the first time is not the same way I read it the second time, and that's not the same way that you would read it if you happen to read this book. The reason for this is it's an experimental novel. It was published in 1969 by the British author B.S. Johnson, and its title is The Unfortunates. As far as I'm aware, this was the second book to be published in this form as a book in a box. The first one was published in 1962 by the French novelist Marc Saporta, and that was called Composition Number 1. If we go ahead and open it up, we find this nice little package of sections held together by a stylish red wrapper. And my OCD won't let me tear this wrapper, so I'm going to have to slide it off nice and carefully to reveal the different sections. And so The Unfortunates was published in these 27 different sections. There's one section marked first, and another section marked last. And the other sections just have these neat little symbols to demarcate one from the next. And the idea here is that you shuffle the sections, except for the first and last one, obviously, and then read it in whatever random order happens to come up. And you must be thinking, this is never going to work. It's going to be one of these bullshit experimental novels, right? And I've done this before too. I get all excited about the idea of an experimental novel, then I actually read it and I'm like, this is bullshit. But I'm here to tell you that with The Unfortunates, that is simply not the case. I think the reason it works, well, there are two reasons I think that it works. And to understand them, you need to know a bit about B.S. Johnson's writing philosophy and a little bit about the plot. And the fun thing is I don't have to worry about giving the ending away because, whereas I guess there's the last, but really you basically know the entire plot by the end of the first section. So no sweat for me, right? So in terms of B.S. Johnson's writing philosophy, most of my knowledge of which comes from the introduction here to The Unfortunates, which is written by the British novelist Jonathan Coe. And I couldn't disagree with B.S. Johnson's take on it more. In the introduction, Coe writes that, according to B.S. Johnson, novelists, if they were to be honest, a quality B.S. Johnson prized above all others, should confine themselves to one subject only, the simple facts of their own lives. How can you convey truth in a vehicle of fiction, he asked, before concluding with childlike directness, the two terms, truth and fiction, are opposites, and it must logically be impossible. I didn't like that and when the first time I was reading this, I did read the introduction first, which is weird for me because usually I avoid introductions. I was reading this and I'm like, oh no, I'm going to hate this. I think that fiction is all about imagination and creativity and wonder. One of the most exciting things for me as a writer is the freedom to create worlds and make stuff up, you know? So this idea that writing has to come from your own lives, that it's utterly strict, write what you know, really pissed me off, actually. But as I learned as I got into the novel, in this case, the knowledge that what you're reading is more or less an experimental memoir rather than a novel actually really helps to make it work. Unsurprisingly, B.S. Johnson writes with a lot of realism, and taken together, these things result in what was, for me, a really emotional read. Of course, some sections work better than others, but overall I was surprised at how much I related to the things he was saying and the things that the characters were going through. The other reason it works so well is the disjointed nature of the novel, like the fact that it's published in all these sections, is this big metaphor for memory and the nature of memory. The basic plot is that B.S. Johnson goes to Nottingham to work at his day job as a reporter reporting on a European football match. And he arrives in Nottingham, and only after getting there and looking around does he realize that he knows this place very well. He's been here before, mostly visiting a friend of his who had since passed away. And so the narrative involves B.S. Johnson going about the day-to-day minutiae of reporting this soccer match, interspersed with these sort of flashes of memory he's just being blindsided with of his friend and the happy times they went through and the struggles they went through leading up to his friend's eventual passing. And sometimes the way that B.S. Johnson stylistically deals with these unreliable memories is a little bit much. The way the narrator goes, well, I thought it was this way, but maybe it was this way. It doesn't really jump off the page, but again, taken as a whole, it makes for a really engaging and actually kind of a short read. To finish up, I'm just going to read the very first paragraph of the book. In my opinion, the first and last sections are just masterful. They do a fantastic job of bookending the book. So I'm just going to read from the very first page. But I know this city, this green ticket hall, the long office half rounded at its ends, that ironic clerestory, brown glazed tiles, green below, the same, the decorative hammer beams supporting nothing above. Of course, I know this city. How did I not realize when he said, go and do city this week, that it was this city? Tony. His cheeks sallowed and collapsed round the insinuated bones. The gums shriveled, was it, or shrunken? His teeth now standing free of each other in the unnatural half-yawn of his mouth. Yes, the mouth that had been so full-fleshed, the whole face, too, now collapsed, derelict. The thick-framed glasses, the only constant. The mouth held open as in a controlled scream, but no sound. The head moving only slightly. The white, dried, and sticky saliva, the last secretions of those harassed glands, cauterized into deficiency. His mouth closing only when he took water from a glass by his bed, that double bed in his parents' house, bungalow. Water or lemon he had to take frequently because of what the treatment had done to his saliva glands, how it had finished them, him. So the bottom line is I strongly recommend this book. It's an interesting read, it's unique. At times, depending on what order you come up with, it can be a little bit dense. But I think it's really worthwhile, and I think it's really cool, the idea that I am going to read it again sometime, but what I read later is not going to be the same thing as I just finished reading, which wasn't the same as I read before. So it's kind of a new experience every time you read it. So that is The Unfortunates by B.S. Johnson. The word of the day today is estuary. It's a word that came up while I was reading The Unfortunates, and I probably learned what it meant in 12th grade bio, but I forgot and I had to look it up. And it's essentially the place where a river or several rivers meets the ocean. So it's this area of brackish water, a sort of a transition zone between two different environments that's under the influence of both. And I guess that's a bit of a technical description, but I actually think it's a really beautiful sounding word, which is why estuary is the word of the day. Sound that makes night fall around it, like the glow from a reading lamp. Rain on the roof, straight down, the name of your name spoken without another's. Rubato is a hand you thought indifferent, laid briefest of moments on your sleeve. It walks away then, that sound, without looking back, lights up a lucky, says, we hadn't the ghost of a chance, says never let me go. Well, thank you very much for watching today. Remember, you can find me online at brockpeters.ca. I've got some samples of my own writing up there if you're interested, as well as a blog. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button or subscribe if you'd like to hear more from me, and I'll see you next time.